It's Jim, and welcome to Trek World. And today I have a story that has everything you could ever want. It has romance, it has action, it has media, it has conflict. What is it about, you ask? It's about a time in the 1970s that Star Trek fans went to war. So sit back, make yourself comfortable, and join me on this trip down memory lane. Now, as a Gen 1 Trekkie, I can tell you that in the late 1960s, when Star Trek first aired on television, its fans were dubbed Trekkies by the media and the public. It was not a name we chose. This was the name that we were given by people. At first, we embraced the term, as it identified us as fans of a groundbreaking science fiction show. However, by the early 1970s, we began to feel the term may carry some negative connotations. Why, you ask? Well, there were several incidents in the 1970s that contributed to Trekkies wishing to distance themselves from the label. As the earliest Star Trek conventions began to take hold around the country, local newspapers began to take notice, and they really liked poking fun at the attendees who they felt were a bunch of oddballs obsessed with a TV show. Now, the articles that they would do would include interviews with psychiatrists suggesting that Trekkie interests were pathetic escapes from reality. And this portrayal of Trekkies as eccentric outcasts was picked up even in national magazines like Newsweek and Time. And around the same time, TV didn't give us much of a break either. The infamous Saturday Night Live sketch parodied Trekkies as socially awkward nerds wearing Vulcan ears and debating insignificant details of the show. That sketch went viral for its mocking depiction of Trekkies as overtly obsessed fans unable to function normally in society. Take it a step further, it wouldn't be long before Bill Shatner himself showed up on Saturday Night Live and addressed a group of these Trekkies, telling them to get a life.
Get a life, will you, people? For crying out loud, it's just a TV show. I mean, look at you. Look at the way you're dressed. You've turned an enjoyable little job that I did as a lark for a few years into a colossal waste of time.
Now, footage from the very first earliest Star Trek conventions also did damage to Trekkies' reputations. Local news reports covering the conventions focused always on interviewing the most oddly dressed attendees, portraying Trekkies as kooky misfits. Now, as you can imagine, by the mid-1970s, things were getting a little uncomfortable, and many Star Trek fans felt embarrassed. They thought the term implied that they were laughable geeks and freaks. And this was unfair, because most fans were ordinary people who actually happened to enjoy Star Trek. We had doctors, we had lawyers, we had plumbers, we had construction workers, we had checkout people, we had librarians, we had school teachers. Not everybody who was a Star Trek fan was eccentric. And these people felt that their view of fandom was better reflecting Star Trek's thoughtful philosophies. So they proposed that they change the name of the Star Trek fan from Trekkie to Trekker. A small little thing, you would think, wouldn't you? Well, it started out really small, but it didn't take long to erupt into a full-on civil war among Star Trek fans. Because here's the deal, okay? You got these people who are saying, I am absolutely 100% done with all the crap they're showing on TV that paint me as a Star Trek fan as being so eccentric that I have to apologize to my friends and family about being a Star Trek fan. Debate started in conventions, and it started because of the fact that it didn't take long for the people who were at the conventions, yes, they were generally the cosplayers, raised their hands in the audience during these discussions and said, excuse me, what I do for Star Trek, what you see here, this is an artistic expression of my love for this show. Yeah, I dress up. I write folk songs. I write fanzines. I'll help you with letter writing campaigns. I'll do all sorts of things. And yes, maybe some people view that I am a little eccentric and over-invested in Star Trek. That's me. That's my identity. And what you're saying right now is that my identity is embarrassing Star Trek fans. And as a result, you want to segregate me and make me the laughing stock over in the corner and claim that everything that's normal about Star Trek is in the Trekkers area, but in the Trekkies area, it's the kooks and the weirdos. How do you respond in a public environment to that kind of challenge? You really can't, because every word that you say from that point forward is going to widen the chasm. So the Trekkers took their battle to the press. They wrote every existing Star Trek fan club in the nation. They wrote every one of the magazines. Starlog, all about Star Trek fan clubs. Enterprise Incidents, Trek Magazine. Every one of these publications contained letters from people establishing why Trekkers was the name that people needed to use if they wanted Star Trek to be taken seriously. During this time, it actually became very uncomfortable for the Trekkies. It really did. But the Trekkers were winning the war. One by one, all of these individual media outlets started referring to Star Trek fans as Trekkers, and they would still only use the word Trekkies when they wanted to poke fun at Star Trek. When Star Trek The Next Generation came out, we brought in new fans. Yes, we had all our original Gen 1 fans, but we had now Gen 2 fans. Fans that had never seen Star Trek before, but because Next Generation was being syndicated across the entire globe at one time, they were being exposed to something that didn't look like a clunky TV show from the 1960s. Next Gen was futuristic. Next Gen inspired faith in the general public. There's a reason why, to this very day, the Next Generation era of Star Trek, the Berman era, was the most profitable and most critically acclaimed Star Trek ever produced to date. And something strange began to happen. After 2000, the public didn't really look at Trekkies as being weirdos anymore. I mean, we had the general public acceptance of Comic-Con. So suddenly, cosplay, the number one thing that was used against Trekkies back in the 1970s, well, cosplay was respected by people now. And lo and behold, a few years later, we have a TV show like The Big Bang Theory, in which I can tell you right now, the over-the-top stereotype traits, even though they were scientists. Big Bang Theory actually resolved our problem for us, because since that time, basically, Star Trek fans are Star Trek fans. And we call ourselves Trekkers. We call ourselves Trekkies. I found out through Fandom on this channel that we even call ourselves Trekkists, and I had never even heard that before. But finally, after over 50 years, the argument bears no teeth. Now, we need to acknowledge that the push to change from Trekkies to Trekkers shows the power of media depictions to shape public perception, both positively and negatively. It's a cautionary tale about judging groups by their most visible extreme members instead of their moderate majority. Within Star Trek, all types of fandom have become more acceptable in mainstream culture. Unfortunately, within our general society today, we still haven't learned that lesson. Through this channel, I have met so many people. I have met movie producers, authors, special effects people, teachers, lawyers, an astronaut, okay? I've met all of these people because we are all Star Trek fans. We're one family, a fandom. Very few other areas of society today can say the same thing. So hopefully, Gene's vision of the future, that maybe we will one day put aside our differences for the betterment of mankind, is still a possibility. So until then, live long and prosper. And thank you for spending time with me.